all different types of technologies that are used, malignant technologies used to do some pretty horrific things. And so sit back and thanks for being here today. Resume.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I have Elana Freeland here now, and author of two Under an Ionized Sky, and one prior to that. I'm more familiar with the Ionized Sky, and again, so I've been aware of Clifford Carnicom for a long time. I've been on the mailing list, if you will, and then as of, I guess it was a couple months ago, I saw that there was another conference, and so I kind of tuned into it and watched as much as I could at the time with the amount of time that I had, and the other at a bookstore, looking around, and I'm in an area of the bookstore that used to be called New Age. They used to call the books that were in that area New Age, and now it's totally under a different title. But there were any number of things, of course, the David Icke books about the global conspiracies and things, and then boom, I see Under an Ionized Sky there, and it triggered in my memory, because I know that I saw it through my many hours of just perusing, information about chemtrails, and then of course seeing you in at the conference talking about the information that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And then I'm looking in there and everything, and I'm like, I've got to contact, this person that's written these books, that's taken the time to address an issue that so many people have absolutely no idea that's going on. It's going on right above their heads. It's so absolutely frustrating. Like one of the people in the question and answer the section of the video, where the guy says, I try to tell my neighbor, I try to tell these people, and they just laugh at me. Yeah. They just laugh at me. They ridicule me, and they have no idea what's going on in the world, and it's so frustrating. That like yourself, like Mr. Carnicom, like me, like the other people can be so into and know that something's wrong, whereas others are absolutely so disconnected. It's just it's baffling to me. And again, like any times throughout our notifications, I thank you for thank you for the time that you spend doing this. It's horrifying. It's really scary, and some of the things I like it's going to have to say, I'm not doing this stuff. What's that? Have you? Yes.
You hear that?
What was that?
Unbelievable static, yeah. and yeah. Now I have to go. It was very pointed. I mean, it's really somebody doing that, and I want to make sure you're hearing it.
Oh, I'm sure there's something. I'm sure there's something. I'm sure there's something. Yeah.
Do you want to try to call me back, or what are we going to do?
So is it still? I can hear you pretty good, but you're having.
Oh yeah. they're putting you on reduce 2, 3 or 4 times.
Okay, let me try. I'll disconnect and then reconnect to you. Okay.
If it'll work, yeah.
Let's give it a second.
Okay. I'm here.
Okay. All right. So
You hear me?
yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we can try it again. I don't know what's going to happen.
We can hopefully deal with it. If it gets too bad, then we'll try to figure something else out. All right.
Okay.
So again, the frustration of these things, like today, I'm out there and I see a lot of these really like normal clouds, low level normal clouds, and then you see some blue, and then you just see this like somebody dumped a bunch of white paint in the background so that the clouds just doesn't even look normal or real. It's like the skies, it's like not even real. And I can't even begin to tell you. I guess it was maybe, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago that I became aware of seeing pictures of these, the white lines. And then for some reason something clicked, like maybe they had always been there. I just didn't notice. But then you understand why, if you're not thinking about it, it doesn't really click with you. Like you could see these lines, but it just doesn't click.
Right.
So you kind of get it, how people aren't paying attention. Plus, there's just so much brain damage that's going on with the phones and other things that you obviously pointed out and Clifford pointed out in your presentations. So I guess we'll get started with have you always been an activist about these things? And was the geoengineering, the chemtrailing, was that something that just kind of was like, boom, this is bigger than anything else that you've seen, so you just started to kind of focus on that? Or were you always an activist in a lot of the others? And I know that you mentioned the 2001 event in the city, and how that was complete fraud. It was a fraudulent event. So you're awake on so many levels, unlike many people out here. What like your background, was this the awakening for you, or was there much more to that than geoengineering was a trigger? Like this is an attack. This is something that's happening that I need to focus on and start writing books and do the things that you've done.
Really, to understand how someone like me can stay awake and get progressively more and more awake since the 60s. You have to understand that I was raised in an Eastern European community in Detroit, Michigan. 5 square blocks of nothing but Ukrainians, Hungarians, Czechs, Romanians, Russians. Every day I heard 5-6 languages and was a translator for my grandmother's Romanian. I mean, being raised as a European with a consciousness of the immigrant and the judgmentalism that comes toward immigrants really helped me when I hit America at about 8 or 9 years old. My mother and I moved to New York City. I then really, that was the first time I really ever seen white bread, sliced white bread, gallons of milk, big steaks and things. I mean, I was literally like an immigrant, and therefore what develops for someone like that is you're kind of distant from American society. I speak good English. I am American. I was born here, but I really have always sort of stood aside and looked at America because my grandmother, she was escaping from Ceausescu in Romania, terrible ogre, and she also told me that she was sad to report that she now saw that Dracula had moved to America. She's a Roma gypsy. Mm-hmm. She was clairvoyant. She was very unique and powerful. And really that kept me aloof from what Americans think of themselves. She thought it was the greatest country on earth, but in the 60s when our three kings got hit, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy, when they got hit, we all knew it was the CIA. We knew that. Right. Nothing could convince us otherwise. And yet we were young. And we had the CIA and the FBI through COINTELPRO on our backs, putting bad drugs in the street, killing our rock stars, really coming down hard on us because Newsweek and Time magazine have always portrayed the 60s as nothing more than sex, drugs, and rock and roll, when the truth is the 60s were really about political activism, political sleuthing into the real events and the underbelly of what was really running America and what really had done those assassinations. And it was also a sort of philosophic, spiritual quest for why are we even here? What is it to be human? What is it to be in a mass society, commodity society like America? Mm-hmm. So, we were constantly searching. So all those years when I was raising my children and involved in various small activism events of trying to start Waldorf schools so children could have a childhood, and everything else I did. I was a storyteller. I started storytelling guilds. I taught at the Evergreen State College and University of Washington, just to the adult education that they have, and so I was always doing something, always, because for me the 60s were about, hey, it's not enough to live for your personal life, friends. You have to live your public life. You have to live for the sake of others, not in some moralistic way. I'm not talking about altruism. I'm talking about how you come here and, you incarnate on the earth, to use Rudolf Steiner language, and you have things to do. And you even know what they are, but you can be distracted, you can be delayed, you can end up with some terrible physical problem, and then you're going to obsess over that the rest of your life. There are many ways to get lost here and to not fulfill why you came. And to me, to live in the most democratic nation on earth at that time, I still saw it was here. This was it on the face of the earth. Then you really have to have a public life. And therefore, I can honestly say that my personal life has certainly thrown stopgaps in my way and various things I had to learn about myself and my childhood and many things. But all in all, I never forget the people, never. And I had the opportunity at 16 to meet John Kennedy, I was at Girls Nation, and I ended up in the Rose Garden with all the rest of the girls, 50 girls from across the United States. Boys Nation boys, Bill Clinton was there. He was there at the same time I was, but I did not know him. He referred to it during his presidency. And, John Kennedy commented how I looked like his wife, and I became sort of a celebrity for 15 minutes of fame. And then when he was killed 3 months later, I had to go to these civic organizations that had paid for my trip to Washington and speak about my day with Kennedy again, because I had spoken when I returned from my trip too. But this time, everyone's sobbing and crying, and it was very, very moving for Americans to see the televised, I emphasize that, murder of a sitting president on TV, went across the world. It was like 9/11 when they had Jackie crawling over that trunk over and over and over and over, just like the towers falling from 9/11 over and over. That's typical CIA conditioning. That's MK Ultra stuff. Yeah. So I spent years studying MK Ultra. I spent years studying the CIA, the National Security Act. I mean, I went into everything I could to understand what the heck was happening to this country. And that was my background before I ever hit the chemtrails HARP situation. Right. And I hit that one because I was writing a series that I finally finished. I spent 20 years off and on that series. It's called Sub Rosa America. And so I had files on everything. I had maybe 200 files on everything to understand how this country was really being run. It wasn't being run through elections. It wasn't being run through the two-party system. It wasn't being run in all the things that we've been conditioned and programmed to believe were not true. Yeah. But there were all these other things that were running it. And I had a chemtrails file and I had a HARP file. And HARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project up in Gakona, Alaska. Right. The first book out on that was in 1995 by Nick Begich. Nick Begich, right. Angels Don't Play This Harp. Oh, sorry, I have to unplug my phone.
No worries.
Ron, call back later. I'm on a radio interview. Bye. So,
So are you familiar with? Do you know Nick Begich? Have you met him? Or are you?
Yeah, I've met him, and I know he knows of me. But Nick is a very conservative, lovely Christian guy, and
his brother was involved in politics, and his father was died very strange situation in that plane crash. Is that correct?
Yes, with Boggs. You bet. Who had been on the committee regarding the assassination of Kennedy. So no, I haven't met. But what happened was I lived in England for a few years, and then I came back, and I moved to Santa Fe. I'd gone to grad school there at St. John's College, and I met, serendipitously, quote unquote, Clifford Carnicom. A friend introduced me to him, and we several of us started going to breakfast every few weeks. And Clifford finally learned that my second major in college had been biology, and so, and that I was writing this book, and I was covering the chemical trails and HARP, and so we began talking about. He was doing a lot of research then on a shoestring budget from the late 90s up until now. Yes. He has always been researching. And at that time was probably around 2007 or 8. And I we started bending over his microscope. We were doing the red wine test to see about these fibers that he was certain were coming down with whatever the chemical trails were releasing. Mm-hmm. And then we did blood tests, and I saw with my own eyes the Morgellons, the creature inside the polymer fiber, because it has many layers.
Is this the paraceum? Paraceum that he was showing? Is this the paraceum, like the one-celled organism, or
paramecium?
Paramecium, I'm sorry.
No, okay. Not at all. No, the Morgellons is a genetically engineered pathogen. Probably they used a bacteria and altered it. They being who? That would be Fort Detrick. That would be the U.S. Army. That would be the CDC. All of the players and culprits. Mm-hmm. But he spent a lot of time on it because, one, he didn't have the fancy equipment that costs a fortune to do things, so he had to jerry-rig a lot of things he needed. And he began growing them once he broke into the fiber and discovered this pathogen that was partially organic, partially of this planet, and partially it was periodic table metals that had been altered. He discovered a whole alchemical, some sort of conspiracy, some sort of creation of this Morgellons.
Yeah.
And then he began growing them in cultures, in petri dishes, and seeing what would happen if he turned the environment into an electrolyte environment, what would happen if he turned it into acidic and alkaline, whatever. And so he went from there, and I was always very interested in what he had to say. But at that point, I was not thinking about writing any book. Then I was contacted by Adam Parfrey at Farrell House. I had done some editing for Adam when I was living in England, and he asked if I thought I could write a book on chemtrails. And I said, sure, yeah, I can, because I had met Clifford, and I had him right there by my side for, running ideas by him and catching me up on things. And so I wrote Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth, and it was published in 2014. And then that book gave birth to a whole new set of ideas. Also, after I was on Coast to Coast, I was contacted by hundreds of people, one of whom was Billy Hayes, known among probably in the military as the HAARP Man, because Billy had belonged through MK Ultra mind control to the three-letter agency I have mentioned, and he had been working on towers with radio, all sorts of microwaves, radio frequency waves, etc., since he was 8 years old. And he had been up on over 240 installations around the world as they began to prepare what Billy told me. He said, look, you're not done with the chemtrails and the HAARP. This is just the presage to the space fence. And the space fence, that's the title of the second book that came out in 2018, Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. Mm-hmm. This is, the space fence is something straight out of the 80s during the Reagan, Bush, Cheney troika, when they had the SDI program, the Strategic Defense Initiative. We likened it to, we called it Star Wars because the Star Wars films had started to come out in 1977. So the that had a space fence in it, but that space fence was kind of like a. I always compare it to a necklace hanging sort of in the southern United States from coast to coast of radar installations that were supposedly searching the skies in a SETI way and also searching the skies for ICBMs, incoming missiles, et cetera, as a defense program. But really, what it was they had much bigger plans for the SDI program. It's just that they didn't have the sky they needed. And that's where HARP came in the late 90s, actually late 80s, when Bernard Eastland, his patent, 1987 patent for HARP, was promised the military that if they could do this, set up a phased array antenna of considerable size. We had ionospheric heaters then, a few on the Earth, one in Norway, one in Russia. We had two here at Brookhaven National Lab. We had another one in Puerto Rico, which is one of our territories. But we didn't have anything on the scale of the power that HARP would have through Bernard Eastland's ideas. And so they began to build that up in Gakona, Alaska. And that's when Nick wrote his book and sort of gave us a heads up that it was coming. And then they put it in action. They always say not till 2005, but the truth is they were already using it in the late 90s. At the same time they began using that, they started flying the planes that would be commercial jets and military, using a fuel, either a fuel that had been treated with certain chemicals so that when it went through the process in the combustion chamber, that it would create a certain chemical environment and be able to piggyback various elements that they wanted to come down secretly. And that would include the pathogen, Morgellons, that would include sensors, microprocessors, all on a nano scale, you understand. I mean, at that time, nobody knew about nanotechnology. Nobody knew it was already being used. Nobody knew that not only was it being used, but it had never been tested. It's sort of like all those vaccines they've got now. They don't test them. They test them on us. Mm-hmm. And then they block lawsuits. So that got going in the late 90s, and that's when Clifford began to notice what was falling from the sky, that those were not contrails. Those were not condensation trails, not water vapor and ice crystals. No. This was chemistry. He knew that by the signature that they would make when they came out the backs of the jets and when they would sort of dissipate into a thin cirrus cloud cover that was not at all like the cirrus clouds of yesterday.
Yeah, and you can see a normal scenario, because I see it quite often, where you'll see just like a white dash, and it'll be the condensation coming out, freezing, but it's like a dash that kind of moves through the air as it disappears, as it melts.
Yep.
And what we see are just lines that stay, and I mean you can look up on certain days and you can see how they'll do like little dashes. They'll kind of try try to kind of mix it up a little bit. Like they'll do little dashes, and you'll see like little dashes in the sky.
Yeah, but that's not because they're trying to do dashes. That's actually, I know what you're talking about. That's actually a chemical signature. And if we had the formula,
right.
First of all, the first thing we need is the formula for the JP-8 fuel that all these commercial and military jets use.
Right.
Can we get it? No, we can't get it because it's classified. It's classified. And that's for commercial jets as well, you understand, because they were part of the project that I call Cloverleaf. It's the military project is known as Cloverleaf.
That was one of the first things that I saw when I looked it up. I saw Cloverleaf as being like a project name for this.
Yes,
exactly.
Because that was the one in which they got all the pilots of 20 years ago, 15 years ago, to sign NDAs. That's when they basically took over all the entire airline industry because whether you're talking about the towers that are keeping track of the planes coming in and out, you're talking about the pilots and what's on board the plane in the infrastructure of it. All of that was taken over, and so those joined the military jets as a delivery system of all this stuff that Clifford Carnicom and others. But Clifford, to my knowledge, is the only actual bona fide scientist who has done these experiments over and over and over and is satisfied that they are true. He's doing real scientific method. A lot of other people are just sort of putting things together, kind of like I do, where I do a ton of research, and then when the dust settles, I can see a picture, and I begin to work with that. So this whole idea of dropping this delivery system, we know they have done this in the U.S. military, has done this many times, but not on a global scale. This is all of NATO, and because our atmosphere is one big envelope, right? One big bubble. Right. We're all breathing inside this bubble. Okay. And it has winds and it has currents, and there are things move around. So the fact that all of the NATO countries really started this, and then now you have China, Russia, India, etc., all trying to catch up.
All right, so this is something that I've always wondered, and I do watch a lot of RT just to get a different flavor of news from other areas of the world, and I wonder, are they doing that? Is that geoengineering happening over there in Russia? I have no connection to anyone. I've never interviewed anyone over there to be able to ask that, so I don't know.
Oh yes, they would have to be doing that because this is the weapon of the weapons. This weather instrument. I mean, this impacts the food supply. Right. You can bring a drought. You can bring floods. You can bring tornadoes. I prove all that
which
in the
we've already seen.
Book.
Which we've seen. We've seen evidence of droughts. We've seen evidence of any number of different weather modification effects.
That's right.
So I guess one other question that I have for you is, everybody kind of seems, and I don't buy it for a second, because, when I got involved in this and I started doing podcasts in probably late 2011, and I did I regret largely listening to Alex Jones for a period of time, because he's the guy, he's the expert sandwich maker, where he'll put all the amazing things. He'll ask you what you want. He'll throw all the organics and stuff in there, and the best the best ingredients and everything, and then when you're not looking, he'll put a turd into the sandwich.
He's a limited hangout.
That so you do learn certain things, but at the same time, it's more of a money making scheme. And then now that he's been under an extreme amount of pressure, now he's backpedaling on all the things that he said and he spoke about before. So I listened to him for a period of time, but because I think my path was always, I never made any money on this. I just put my time into it. And as I was going forward, because I think that I was doing things the right way and I was doing it, from the heart and doing it for the right reasons, it just, people and information just presented itself to me that pushed me in the right direction so that I wasn't off track for too long. And so, that's more about me. I'm not, so many people out there, disinformation agents, and so many people out there that are just making money off the system and don't want to say who's really involved, what groups of people are really involved in a lot of the different things that are going on. Whereas, me, I'm just, I'm legitimately frightened, about this stuff. Fear plays a lot into why I do what I do. It's definitely affecting, my adrenals and things like that, over time. And, I think I'm just going at it from, I want to try to do something. I want to try to make some awareness, try to make some change. And, that's why I'm trying to connect with you guys and with Karnakon, because he, in his dissertation at the end there, where he's pleading with people, he's like, I can't do this on my own anymore. I need help to do this. So I just wanted to point that out. I know. Sorry to interrupt there.
No, that's fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Clifford is a gem. He's, as I said in the introduction, that the group that brought Clifford, as they said, and I had told them, he's the most ethical person I've ever met. He absolutely serves humanity. There is no question. Whereas many of these other people, I call them limited hangouts. It's an intelligence term. I think it's very accurate. They'll stick on one subject and then do some spin, and you have to really have quite the background, which is why I brought up the fact that I spent years and years researching things about America in order to write my Sub Rosa America series. But it gave me the background, and it gave me the practice of reading information versus disinformation versus misinformation.
Right.
So I consider myself quite an expert on that. And if I have time after this, I'm writing the third book now, which is on synthetic biology and transhumanism, right, and how all of this plays into it. All of what's coming down from the sky, all the wireless technology that people are addicted to, all the GMO foods, that's another delivery system, all the vaccinations, another delivery system. All of this plays into changing humanity and changing life on Earth as we have known it in our relationship with nature. So yes, you are. I wouldn't say you're right to be afraid, because I don't personally do fear. I'm a soldier on the front lines. I have a certain obligation, a certain responsibility that is self-chosen, absolutely self-chosen. And I have to take the heat now and then if I'm targeted, if I'm having trouble with my technology, whatever it is. But this is the right side of the fight to be on, the side you're on. And you're Shali, right? That's your name, Shali?
Yeah. Yeah, it's my the Shali Lama is my
Shali Lama. Shali Lama. Oh, that's cool.
the online thing.
So yes, but I wouldn't do fear.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to, it's very, very hard to, like, I mean, when you realize, and I've had connections to people, authors that have written like, books, 15, 16, 17 books about one of the books. It's called Prion Agenda. And this guy has done incredible research, and his, the sum of that research is that all of these neurological diseases are pretty much the same thing. What happens is they get labeled different names. The medical cartel gives them different names. Okay.
Yes.
And he has brought this back to, and they call a lot of these dementia, dementia spectrum disorders, things like that. It all comes back to, through his research, and this has been kind of corroborated by a number of other people that have been presented to me, again, strictly from my, I think just kind of karmically, because I've done this just out of my want to not have this dystopian future, or to not have these people be able to do this. And I wanted to raise awareness. I don't know if I ever have, but his breakdown is that in these injections, amongst the aluminum, amongst all of the other nasties that are in there, are infectious proteins. And this is what really, really kind of clicked with me when I heard Clifford say, these are proteins. And it was just like ding, 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 ding. It went off,
Yes.
And I said, this has a connection to Patrick's work.
Yes, and I'm so happy to hear that he's pursuing that.
Right.
My hope would be that he would really discover the role that this program going on in the skies is playing in that. That's the thing lacking in a lot of the people who are now awake with their eyes open about the vaccination delivery system. Yeah. I would like them to know about the rest, that we're breathing, that we breathe in these nanoparticles, these nano microprocessors, little computers. We breathe in the sensors, we breathe in the pathogens, the smart dust, the whole thing that Elon Musk talks about with the neuron mesh. We are making that neuron mesh right now in our bodies, because we have all breathed these nano bots into our bodies, and they easily slide past the blood-brain barrier. And I don't know if you've noticed lately, but people are getting stupider and stupider.
Oh my God.
And very unable to read the books I write, for one thing, unable to concentrate, unable to remember, unable to conceptualize. This is serious. This is so serious. But my hope is that they will learn about this other aspect of the geoengineering and the delivery system that it is, and the aluminum nanoparticles, etc., that are now being breathed in, eaten through GMOs, etc. I just want them to know.
Yes, I mean, I just, listening to, and there was a few things that were going on. I think you guys I want to say by the second half of part 2 and into 3, you guys got some of the audio and things kind of cleared up, which I was glad, because one of the most important things, everything was important. Clifford in his beginning, and then when he got to the part about the proteins, and then the question and answer, and the things that you guys, the hour that you both did in part 3, and to kind of go back to the prion, these infectious proteins that get injected into the body can lay dormant for a period of time, And what they've found out is that frequencies, and that's another thing that you guys talked about, was frequencies that activate things. And one of the things that I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but his name is Patrick Jordan, and he's written a number of books. He wrote a book called ICD 999, where his mother had like really, really horrific kidney disease. And in a lot of the books and a lot of the manuals that he read while he was a medical student, it said that these things were caused by serum sickness. Well, of course, if you're going to inject things into the blood that are going to make your blood serum, sick and unstable, it's going to do these things. So the thing that he gets to in his prion agenda is that these, I think they call them ultrasound. When ultrasound hits these prions, they activate and they move around. The thing about these misfolded proteins is that when they touch normal proteins, they have the ability to turn that normal protein almost like a tag you're it type of a situation. So when these infectious proteins go in, and I'm hoping that this has something to do, and that was one of the first things that was just like, I got to make a connection here. I have to, and I don't think anything, I think everything happens for a reason. I think that we're talking today for a reason. And so when he says these prions activate through ultrasound, which is used a lot through, pregnancies, any number of different things, and the things that you guys talk about with the frequencies and the terahertz and all these other different frequencies that activate things, and then 5G, of course, on the doorstep. Right. He says that these proteins go in, they touch normal proteins, and they turn that normally function protein, which is involved in everything, like Clifford said, it's involved in the immune system, it's involved in everything. And what it does is it touches it and it turns it into a misfolded protein, making it completely useless to the body.
Gosh.
And I think that this has something to do with why Clifford said there's proteins that are involved in here, and he said it's involved. This affects everything in the body.
Yeah.
So I sent these videos to Patrick, who's kind of been out of communication for a little while, and I imagine any number of different things happen when you deal with things of this nature for so long. It's got to have its effect on you. And so another thing I wanted to point out was you also mentioned this Anthony, this gentleman who's got a video. He does a lot of podcasts. You talked about this.
Anthony Patch.
No, it was Tony with
Pantalaresco.
Right.
Yeah.
So I saw a video that came out in this email feed that I get from Patrick, that he sends out to people that are in his group he calls them the Little Red Hens, because this is his group of people that do what you and Clifford are doing. You're sharing information and you're trying to get to the core, the bottom of this, to try to make a difference, to try to avert this disaster that's coming, if at all possible. Mm-hmm. And so I saw him, and he sent a video over, and then he mentions it was about silica in vitamins. And I was just blown away, and I'm looking at it, and then he said something like, he was like, "Oh yeah," and then the life extensions. This is the guy that you mentioned, Tony or Anthony
Pantalaresco.
It's an interesting name. And he said, he said life extensions. And for the longest time, I'm sitting around telling people, oh, life extensions, that's a pretty good brand. It's run by it's run by a bunch of doctors and everybody that are doing this and doing that. And he was just like, he's like, there's silica and magnesium stearate and all of these and he said silica is a metal. Someone said that it was a plastic, but overall his message is that the silica gets into the body and it has some way of starving the cells from being able to get the nutrients that you think that you're getting from the vitamin. So he has this whole dissertation. I'll send it to you. He's got so many. So I mean, I'm sure.
I know.
Focused,
he's prolific.
Right. You obviously focusing on the Morgellons and some of these other frequency things.
Right now, actually, he and I and others are focusing on the nanotechnology now, because yes, Morgellons is nano, but it's much bigger than that. The nano is the problem, and Tony has come up with some amazing uses of magnetics in order to drive the nano bots out of the body, and that's the key for Tony. To me, he's a trailblazer on nanotechnology to not just drive the Morgellons out, and he did have Morgellons. I don't know what phase it's in now. That was how he got involved in all this research, and he has an engineering background. So he makes these magnet things, and then he'll run these videos, and he has a very weird sense of humor. Yes. I forgive him that, but he's doing lots of research with how magnets. And I do think he's onto something with the magnets to drive out the heavy metal detox. Yes, the heavy metals. Magnets will work for that. But along with that, most of these other nanobots, etc., and pathogens have a metal nature that is very keyed into, and get this, i.e. engineered to be programmed to wireless technology. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's how it works.
Yeah. I turn my wireless off at night. I mean, I tried to. I turn cell phones off at night. I mean, I'm just aware of how incredibly dangerous that it is. I mean, it cannot be. Like, from the very first time that I even started thinking about cell phones, and I started, one of the first things that popped into my head was, there's no way this is safe for you. You're sitting there and you're talking on a cell phone, you're having a conversation with someone. That thing is at your head, it's throwing off an energy field. My God! I mean, there's even videos of people. They put unpopped popcorn on a phone.
I've done that with middle school kids. I've done it, and it works.
And they call it, and the corn pops.
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, you can see it. You can see people walking around. They can't put the cell phones down. They can't. It's an obsession, and I find myself obviously, doing it as well from time to time. But at least I'm aware of it. I'm aware of.
Yeah, but what you're not aware of is that it's a military weapon.
Oh, sure.
I don't own one. Right. I won't ever own one. I use a landline. I can use my laptop. That's as electronic as I'm going to get. Right. And you've got to be careful because it's pulsing. Yeah. You think you turn it off, it never goes off, never. And you're being pulsed through the towers, through the 60 hertz in the walls. You're being pulsed with different frequencies for different moods, different thought forms. I mean, that's the problem to me with the cell phone. Sure. You would be wise if you insist on owning one, and now there's a movement happening where people are getting rid of their cell phones and going for the flip phones. You would be wise to put it in your car at night after you turn your router off, after you turn all your things off, so that you can sleep the sleep of the angels without being pulsed. Because that's what Billy Hayes taught me. It's not the voltage, it's not the strength, it's the pulsing of frequencies that is our enemy, because we are resonant beings.
Yes.
We operate on resonance. And that's what we need to really educate ourselves about. We do not want to be resonating to what's being pulsed to our cell phones.
Exactly. I mean,
Okay.
and it's, you know, we look at, you know, stuff that I do. And I mean, I know that this world is weaponized. I mean, it doesn't take very long to find out that, you know, that about artificial sweeteners, things like that. And they even still kind of mention those things in, you know, on television shows about artificial sweeteners and things like that. You look at, you know, from the benzene in a lot of the cleaners that we use, when we could legitimately just use like hydrogen peroxide or vinegar or something like that to clean things. We're constantly using chemicals, the Roundup, the pesticides that are being used, that are getting into the groundwater, that are used. And I think John Rappaport, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with him. No,
Oh, yeah.
NoMoreFakeNews.com. Now, I interviewed John when I was back on Blog Talk Radio a number of years ago, probably 2012. And, you know, his story was pretty fascinating. And he would mention any number of different things that really just kind of, you know, triggered me into this understanding this whole thing. You know, I have a mother who, you know, died of glioblastoma brain tumor. My father died of esophageal cancer, and that was within a week of each other.
Wow.
Back in 2001. So I knew for like the longest time. It's almost as if I've you know. And I'm not like these other people, you know what I mean? And that's the only thing I can think is like, why do I know this? And then sometimes I kick myself in the rear end and I say, like, oh, God, I wish I didn't know this. And then, you know, but once you know it, you can't unknow it. And then, like you said, you have a duty, you have a deeds that you have to do something while you're here. You have to, and once you find out about this stuff, you really have to do something about it, which is really, really shameful, because, you know, you talk to people. I talk to people in the workplace, talk to people about any number of different things, and it's almost so shameful. They're such shameful people, because all they want to do, and it's the same thing. It's the same, the ad hominem attacks, where they'll attack your character if you bring up something that is uncomfortable for them, or something that they would have to lock into, and then they would have to do something. So they're afraid that very minutely, they're afraid subconsciously that what you're saying is true. So their only mechanism for protection is to attack you and to say, you know, that's just ridiculous. Why would that happen? And then, of course, when I do mention about the chemtrail geoengineering and things like that, and I don't get too deep about it, I was like, that's being purposefully put up into the air. They're doing something with it, and from the research that I've done, and the people that I've information that I've read, it is not good stuff in there to breathe. So, and I said, your family is breathing that in. They're breathing in what is in there, and again, they disconnect from it, because the only thing that they can really lock into is, and I get it, because the programming, the psychological effect of this fictional world that we live in, this fictional world that they've taken man they've taken man out of nature. And this is one thing that Clint Richardson has, or truly, I don't know if you ever heard of Clint Richardson, but he's done incredible work. He's coming out with another vaccine movie, like a 6-hour vaccine documentary, because he feels that that's like super important. I know that's on your radar big time. And he's already done a probably, I want to say, like a 2-hour vaccine documentary. In addition to the Corporation Nation, he did a Corporation Nation podcast where he goes in and he breaks down how we've been turned all into like legal objects. We're not even part of nature anymore, because what they do is they've turned us into straw men of our original, at birth. We're turned into our birth certificate as a banknote, and so many of these other aspects, which obviously he focuses on, and you focus on this. So my problem is that what I've done over the years is I haven't really focused on one thing. It's just, a mishmash of everything. Like, I have a concern about everything. So I've never really like truly focused on, on any one particular thing. I know that they're all individually important. And obviously right now with the 5G rollout,
but they're all connected, you see. Exactly. I mean, I do focus, but yes. But as I continue to take layer after layer after layer of research up and look under the rug, I discover that each of these things is connected. You just mentioned 5G. It's definitely connected. Yeah. Vaccinations, definitely connected to geoengineering. I mean, the geoengineering, and this is what people... it keeps falling off people's radar, no pun intended, is that the geoengineering is a tool of what Catherine Austin Fitts has said is the secret space program. And this is how I couch my talks now that I give, and I did that in Santa Fe. I do it everywhere because I have a very real feel for the space program. And it has been going now since we brought Wernher von Braun over and turned our rocket program over to him. It has been going on since we let in all the paperclip Nazis and scrubbed their records. It has been going on since John F. Kennedy was gotten out of the way because he wanted to be able to work together with Russia, Khrushchev, in order to have a space age very different from this one, i.e. this one is totally weaponized. So this geoengineering program that we've had now for 20 years yes. of denial and secrets and lies and obfuscation, this is a servant of the secret space program. So that's how I know that spending any energy in my early years in this movement, people kept saying to me, Elana, how can we stop this? How can we stop? We're not going to stop this. Right. That it is possible that they're going to be able to keep the sky ionized for wireless operations by not having so much heavy metal in it on a nanoscale. Could be they'll come up with something else. But right now, surviving this and understanding the big picture of this will give you the prioritization that you were indicating you and others might lack, in that you're concerned about everything. It's good to be concerned, but for prioritizing, I would say, knowing what I do about just about everything, this is the highest that there is, because not only from a chemical and a remote operant standpoint, but think of the mind control aspects. This is MK Ultra on steroids, in a remote way. They can do things to us. In fact, right now I'm having a symptom that I think I'm all right. But anyway, they can use this to do all the targeting they're doing with people. And this is something that is yet another one of the things that's involved in this. You see what I mean? Yeah. I mean, you take an entire planet and you ionize its atmosphere, which basically means it's electrified. It's battery ready. It's antenna ready for any operation, any wireless operation that the military industrial intelligence complex might want to run. And they keep it ionized by dropping more and more heavy metals that are highly conductive and zapping the ionosphere with the ionospheric heaters. So they have to keep it boiling in a way, double toil and trouble, fire burn, that whole right. Witches scene in Macbeth is what it reminds me of. Our atmosphere is hot. It's got an unnatural heat now, and then it's got an unnatural cold when they shift it in order to produce with the ionospheric heaters. They can produce massive cold and fake snow. So the weather thing is central and pivotal to many, many, many other wireless operations being run now to serve the secret space program. That's the important thing to remember, how big this is. So as we unlock and unpack this, vaccinations, GMOs, whatever it is, we can unpack that, but it would be great if we would not have crossed out that, the geoengineering, that's just about weather. No, it's so not just about the weather.
Well, most of the things that they do are I say multi-pronged.
Yes.
Multi-pronged, multiple effects that they can get. Maybe it's two things. If you see something, maybe it's two, maybe it's three. In this case, we're talking 5, 6 different things when it comes to, you pointed out with the vaccines, with the food.
But do you see, the reason I brought in the secret space program, do you see that full spectrum dominance over planet Earth is essential if they're going to launch out into the solar system with empire ideas? They have got to control every aspect of planet Earth. And I'm serious. Yeah. Yes, they are psychopaths and sociopaths, but this is their objective. And that's where I see the 5G coming in. That will be the linchpin by which we are absolutely controlled, because those millimeter waves in the 5G are going to be perfect for contacting the nanobots in us that can be remotely programmed, activated, tweaked, whatever you want to say. And that's going to get everybody into a slave class, especially the not very conscious people. Now, you're pretty conscious, and I'm pretty conscious. We people who are pursuing becoming conscious of these things, not to make us fall into fear and anxiety and, I wish it were a different life. No, we're learning these things because by carrying them in our consciousness, we become that much stronger with knowledge. I always write in the books that I sign, knowledge is power. Scientia est potentia. And I don't mean information. I mean the whole gnosis, the whole knowledge process by which you take on real knowledge and truth, no matter if it hurts, no matter if you can't see a solution today. The American only likes solutions they can do right now. They're not very good on the forethought. They're good on materialism. They're good on being pragmatic in their own way.
Remembering, sports statistics, baseball player's batting average in
Well, that's the
1977.
major distraction for the male, right?
Oh my God.
They've done a great job on that, haven't they?
And
Wow.
I love sports to a certain extent. You know, I love watching hockey. I love to watch the natural. You know, I'm in suburban Philadelphia, so I kind of get it. I see over the years. I saw how sports would, at one point I wasn't really that involved in it or wanted to know about it, but then it got to a point where, wow, everybody, that this whole group over here is watching it, let me check it out. And then you kind of get involved in it. But knowing, but pay
attention to the idea, the possibility that they are being pulsed.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Take a look. I mean, think about the people who are so over emotional about Trump. I mean, okay, Trump might not have been my choice, but so what? Emotion over emotion? I don't get it.
It's really off the hook to the point where they focus and they hate him so much. Now, I see him working towards going to war with Iran. The other day, that psyop with him, saying, no, we're not going to do this because, 150 people are going to, maybe stay out of another country's airspace.
But why are you even talking about Trump? That's not the point.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, for sure.
It doesn't matter. Exactly. I mean, the Iran thing, every 4 years, every president since Kennedy has, in order to get reelected, he'll start a war somewhere. I mean, every president. Obama too. All of them. That goes with the territory. But the point is, it's the pulsing of people where when you look at them and you listen to them about the sports or the emotionalism, you really listen carefully. This person is not home. What is this that I'm listening to? Yeah. I'm listening to some sort of programming.
Yes, I've said it any number of times that it's possible that there's a large percentage of the population out there that has never had a unique thought in their head or expressed a unique thought in their head.
But a lot of these people are the educated left. What has happened to them?
Well, sometimes being educated in a system that's weaponized history. I mean, if you look at so many different things, the education. Every time they go back, it's about education. On last week's program, I played a video of a young woman who was at a graduation ceremony, and it didn't really give any details about where it was or what school it was, but what the young woman did, and the clarity of her 10 15-minute dissertation, she started talking about John Taylor Gatto. I don't know if you ever heard it. Where she goes in there and she basically says, this is not schooling and education is not about making, preparing us for this or preparing us for that. It's about making us think the same thing. Basically turning us into this cookie cutter, the way we think, what we do. And then she prefaced the whole thing by saying, I'm about to graduate and I'm frightened. I'm scared because, and then she goes through this dissertation and I was just like, and then you could just see so many people sitting there and you can just imagine what the indoctrinated, the people that make their money, and then you and Clifford pointed this out any number of times about people that are working in this. This is what they do for money. This is how they feed themselves. They're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. They're not going to do things. And these teachers will sit there and say, when a young woman in 15 minutes time just takes all of education and what we've all been indoctrinated in. I'm sure we've learned to, do any number of different things. We've learned a history that is skewed, and that basically is our history, our lies agreed upon.
And how to write an essay that we started being forced to learn in fourth grade. I mean, kids now are.
Yes.
Not when I was in fourth grade. No way.
Right.
They wouldn't have had us doing an essay. How stupid is that? Yeah.
Yeah, and so you get situations like what it was. I mean, I've seen tests, tests from the late 1800s, early 1900s. And you can't even believe, the questions that children were able to answer back then. And then you'll watch YouTube videos of children, and it says American teenagers have got to be like the dumbest. And then you watch it, and you can't even believe. You can't believe. It's like I'm looking at this, and I can't even believe what's coming out of that person's mouth.
I know, and especially geography, right?
Right.
Where they don't know where anything is.
They don't know where anything is. America, and it's very, very, I've come across and have been privileged to come across people that have really kind of pushed me in the right direction. People that pushed me in the direction to be able to a guy like by the name of Clint Richardson, one of the smartest, somebody who sits there and has the ability to sit there and go through U.S. code and read all of this information, and to be able to put it out there in the way that he does. And I sit there and I'm just like, I'm just privileged to be able to have you on this program with me, to have you talk with me, because I don't have the skills that you have. I don't know what happened. I'm just going to be I will sit there and I will read certain things. My attention span, I notice right away that I just can't I can't really lock into it. And I don't know what it is. It could be what we're talking about now, what we're addressing now.
Well, if you were raised with television, you need look no further.
Well, that's absolutely.
I wasn't raised with television. I've never owned one.
Yes.
My attention span is tremendous, and my ability to concentrate and remember is tremendous. And it's that terrible, terrible TV that the military. All those devices, people forget this. They all came from the military, all the way from the cell phone back to the radio. And they only gave those to us to be commercial and for people to make money from when they were satisfied that they had it the way they needed it for mind control. So, these devices really need to be looked. You said everything's weaponized, you're right, but there's a certain group of weapons that really need to be identified as weapons, and they tend to be our convenience entertainment items.
Absolutely. And I happen to notice, and I do I watch more so movies that have that have more of a dystopian type of a lesson in it. And I think that there are some movies out there that really give us that will give us little tidbits, little
it's called pre-programming.
Exactly, like the Hunger Games.
Minority Report. All of them.
Minority Report. There's a series of movies out there called Divergence. I don't know if you ever, and I explain this to people all the time. At least check it out, because what it does is it points out a dystopian type future that some kind of cataclysm happened, and as they're building this society. When the children graduate, they graduate into four different groups. They look at you, they look at your skills, and then they graduate you to be in this particular group or one of four. But the problem is that every now and then they'll come across someone who has all the skills. And in this case, it's this one young woman. She has all of the skills, and she tries to hide it because they try to read her mind. They try to pull in like certain things about this person, and her mother, who turns out later to have a lot of these same attributes, tries to tell her, like, listen, try not to do this, try not to do that, but she kind of gets through it. But the point is that she has all four of these attributes, and when she has all four of these attributes, she's considered to be dangerous to the entire collective group.
Well, let's not talk about movies.
But anyway, that's
say to people that they should, for every movie they see, they should read one book. That's all. You're going to see a movie, and you're going to go into alpha wave, brain waves.
Right.
You're going to be just toast. And the director's going to put into your mind through the subliminals and the 4S theater machinery they have, putting the movie up on the screen. You're going to be at their whim and will.
Absolutely.
Okay, if you're going to do that, if you insist on doing that, then read one book, so that you can retain that ability to concentrate.
Right.
You'll be in beta. You'll be in beta waves. You'll be in some other wave, gamma wave. I mean, you'd be lucky to be in gamma waves. So think of it in terms of frequency and brain waves, not just content.
Right.
Because the content is being manipulated all over the place.
Right.
The only thing I watch in any length of time, other than that I'm at the computer writing all day long, every day, is old British detective stories. I'll watch one a night when I have no more brain power left. And why do I watch those? Because they're intelligent, they're slow moving, there's not violence. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about somebody's been murdered. All right, that's true. But it's not shoot 'em up and all the American stuff that goes with detective stories. That's the only thing I allow myself because I need to let down and be comforted. And I totally admit that. And detective stories for me as a researcher and a writer, that's what I do. I am a detective. And I very much love the British or European. Right. It doesn't matter, but just not American. Because the American thing is just violence from one end to the other. I'm being manipulated from one end to the other, and I resent it, and I do not go to movie theaters anymore because I know the technology they have in them now, not to be trusted. So, learn technology and then make your decisions about what you do in your life from that. That's how to, you won't de-weaponize the world, but you will at least have a barrier between you and it, a fence, a shield. I can't stress this enough. And that's really how I'm talking these days. I spend more time on that than the weather. Like I used to spend a lot of time on the weather. I'm spending time now preparing people for 5G for this lockdown that's already begun.
So now you mentioned a book. Was there a book in particular, or did that you said to get you in beta?
That one you mentioned about prions is a good idea. I mean, it doesn't have to be a heavy-duty, big footnoted book like I write. Right. It doesn't have to be that. It can be something simpler. It can be something you've always been interested in. It's mainly the activity of moving those eyes across the page and retaining what you have just read. That's what I'm concerned about.
That was my
really
thing.
Disappearing.
That's my thing. That's my thing. Like, I will read, and then maybe it's because I'm not really totally focused on it. I don't retain it. I don't retain what I've read to a large extent. I have other skills. I mean, of people, and I spoke about this with someone the other night. Like, I'll be able to see someone, on a screen, and then be able to say, okay, yeah, that person, I know that person. I've seen that person before. Whereas other people, they see someone and they don't even remember that they saw that person before.
Yeah, right. I'm not concerned with
Yeah.
other skills. Yeah. I'm concerned with I was a teacher for many years.
Right.
I'm concerned with the disappearance of this skill, because you are being manipulated through visuals. I don't care if it's a YouTube or a movie or a TV show or an interview. I don't care. It's that you are being manipulated by the people who are electrifying this event and transmitting it to your device. Right. So a book is a pretty simple technology. There it is. Right. And you can go back a couple pages and reread something. But if you are not retaining, short of going and shooting your grade school teachers and maybe your parents who allowed you to watch TV as much as you wanted, or too much anyway, we're going to have to take things as they are. I'm actually recommending to activist groups now, wherever I go to talk, to start a study group and get a few people together, use my book so they can start. It's the only book that's been written on this technology, so that's the only reason I'm recommending my book. I do not make a mint off of this book, needless to say. And sit and read it together, read aloud, and go over it. And if you have a question, ask it and see what the other people say. Really, that you have community then, you have a community effort going on. You have some people who are helping you to concentrate. Right. You're not alone in your bed or in your armchair and ready to fall asleep after a very busy day, and you're trying to read because Elana said you should read. No, you can support each other as you build the ability to concentrate, and you enter a different frequency. This is really the big point. Right. You're entering a frequency which is not alpha. It is not delta. It is not the ones for meditating together to make a peaceful, wonderful earth. I am not espousing that at all, because I know the frequency that you get into there, and that too can be manipulated. No, we want a frequency of the same sort of frequency that the scientists at CERN and at NASA and all these places where they have weaponized these amazing technologies. They have reached into wherever those fields are that these concepts exist and pre-exist. They have reached in there and they are abusing them. They are using them wrongly. So to fight that, I have this crazy idea that if we could just for an evening, an hour in an evening, all put our heads together, read about concepts, read about this technology, go through it carefully, and ask the questions you need to, and your minds are all concentrating on the same thing. You're sharing a frequency. Could it be that if we did more of that, could it be that we would build a strength in ourselves? It's the old where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. A lot of people think that's a Christian thing. Mm-hmm. No, it's a spiritual occult law that you bring a few people together and you logarithmically multiply the power of that frequency. That's how it works. And so I'm actually, this is my latest idea. And there's a group already going in Los Angeles. There's one here in my town. And I'm going to spread it anywhere I can to just try it. I don't know. Maybe it won't work. But I understand the principle of frequency and how by making it really something that you share with people that, you're all concentrating on the same, it's like, doing the Pythagorean theorem. You're all concentrating on the Pythagorean theorem. You are all inside where that theorem lives.
It's like a group meditation,
Yes, it's a meditation I can get behind. I cannot get behind many types of other meditation.
What, like transcendental meditation, things like that?
Yeah, where you're actually in a delta. You're in a frequency that is very spacey and very passive. That is not the one I'm interested in.
Would that be good for people, people that suffer from anxiety, things like that, or no? You think?
I would think so, but I would still be cautious because think of it this way. Let's get a little paranoid for a moment.
Sure.
It's a frequency. What if there is, say you're doing TM, Transcendental Meditation, and I did it when I was 21. I did it for a while. And then one day I had a horrible experience where I felt like I'd been raped on the astral plane or something. I don't know what it was, but I was freaked. And I had been gone 45 minutes, not my usual 20 minutes. So I dumped it, but it took me 3 years to get that mantra out of my head. So imagine that a mantra is a telephone number. And you're dialing in that telephone number. You're repeating that mantra, and now you're leaving your body. You're relaxing. You're getting mellow. You're not thinking about how you need to pick up a quart of milk on your way home or whatever. And you dial that phone number, and then what if there are entities? Given that we have AI now, given that we have the D-Wave adiabatic quantum computer,
right,
that the founder, Geordie Rose, said is like worshiping at the altar of an alien god. Yes. Is he being metaphoric? Well, I don't think so. I think something is going on the quantum level that we need to now wake up to some degree and realize, maybe I don't want to have that frequency. Maybe I don't want to be dialing that number. I don't even know who's going to pick up. I mean, Americans are the worst when it comes to spiritual things because they're so accustomed to things. They're so accustomed to just being so competent with things. And they get into these religious or spiritual movements and whatever they are, meditation groups, yoga, or, do we know enough about the frequencies that these very powerful methods lead us to and what happens to us there? I don't think we do. And I am not interested in that. I got my own problem with geoengineering. So
True.
I'm just trying to strengthen people's minds is all I'm doing. Strengthen their minds by being together and reading the same material, comparing ideas, moving on to the next paragraph, etc. That's all.
So was there a decent turnout? Because obviously in the videos I just saw, a few people. You guys had like an IT person there.
Oh, where we were?
Yes.
Oh, you mean in Santa Fe?
Yes.
Yeah, we had 150 people.
Very nice. Oh, local? Did they come from?
Both days, yeah.
Oh, very good. Was it most people kind of local, or did people come from, distance? I would imagine it,
Came from different states. Yes.
Very good.
And part of it to me was, I'm a sort of an internet rock star of sorts, but Clifford's, has many people who respect him. And I think a lot of people came because Clifford was there.
I mean, he just seems like, like salt of the earth type of guy. I mean,
well, he hardly ever speaks publicly anymore. He won't do it. It's just too wearing on him, and he he is such a researcher, and he has copious notes that he takes, and he loves the research end of science.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, just listening to his breakdown and going to the website, and then going to that research library with all of his information and all of his documents from, as you said, the late
the 90s, yeah.
And I mean, it was just kind of a little bit overwhelming. I clicked on a couple of them, and then there was a few links there to videos that were unavailable, things like that. But of course, that's going to be the case over a 20-year period, where if people are really putting out information that is getting over the target, like super over the target. A lot of stuff's going to disappear, or the channel's going to shut down or something. I mean, they're shutting down channels now, like
right. I think you heard Clifford mention that the first 3 weeks after he started really paying attention to what his HEPA filter was catching and what was in the precipitation, that he had as many as 170 or 180 alphabet agencies hitting his site on a daily level. Oh yeah, they knew he was onto it, and they were very interested in what he was coming up with. He kept that list, and then they made it so that you can't get that list anymore of who's hitting your site.
All right. So basically, what he did was, I mean, because he's obviously kind of IT, he's kind of in the IT realm. He was probably in his router, and then he kind of saw the IP addresses coming in, and then of course the IP address being associated with whatever government agency.
Yeah, and you can go to his site and see exactly what government agencies. It's pretty remarkable.
Right.
Remarkable.
And so he made this incredible plea in his in his hour at the end, saying, "I can't do this anymore myself. I need help. I need," and then he mentioned like a figure of a monetary figure that was, I think he said that he had it on the table or something, and I don't know whether, I mean, if he's monetarily has those resources, I guess it makes sense that he's been able to. It makes sense that he's been able to do the research that he's done, which is, I mean, it's
amazing.
It's some amazing. Of the greatest research that one really, and I don't know how many other. He said it's a relatively small, a group of people. He might have been just referring to him and his wife. Okay, 3. Okay, there you go. So it's 3.
But let me just insert here. He has had one person who has given a lot of money, but this person cannot be expected to continue. We need other. He needs other people.
Right. So he needs. He said that he needed. In order to move forward on specific things, he would need to get a legal representation. He said that he has sent, DNA and any number of different. It's amazing how I guess it's not really.
He's isolated the DNA.
Yeah. He's isolated the DNA of this particular thing, and then the thing about these vaccines is that they have RNA and DNA in them, and then that kind of messes with your genome and all this other stuff. So breathing it in is another type of
delivery system.
Another type of delivery system. So he he really wants to move in a different direction. You know, I mean, I'm at the point in my life, honestly, where, you know, where I think we're all really kind of looking for. I mean, you've obviously kind of found your the thing that you want to do, and you're doing an incredible job at it.
For now, but I've done tons of things.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I'm going to do something different after this next book.
And so, I mean, I'm at this point, I'm looking to, you know, if I had the resources, the monetary resources and the time to give, I would consider it something, you know, incredible to work with and participate in the research that he's done. I mean,
yes.
That's, you know, there was something that I know that he's even on the page. He's got like volunteers because he's desperate to. After 20 years of doing this research, he's gotten to a point where he's like, if this is going to continue, I have to, I have to get help. I need people.
He needs the machines. He needs the machines, and they are a fortune. Even used, they're a fortune. You're talking minimum $50,000 for an electron microscope. Minimum.
Right.
And that's 5,000 power.
And so
he can't study the nano world without this kind of investment. He can't. Right. He doesn't have the equipment.
So when he
he stopped short of looking into the nano world.
So when he in the past went and tried to get his samples, checked out and kind of classified to kind of give it more.
They ignored him.
They ignored him completely, and then they even mentioned
turned him down. CDC, EPA, all of them. So and they were all on that list of checking his site.
I mean, they're just criminal organizations. The things that they've done with that swine flu thing, and I mean, they're definitely moving towards something. I mean, they just had you ever heard of that guy? His name is Robert Preston. He's an author. He was the author of a book called The Hot Zone.
I don't remember.
Well, a book was called The Hot Zone, and it was supposed to be a true story. Clint informed me about it, and they just made a television show about the Hot Zone. It was about Ebola in America, or some type of hemorrhagic, some kind of hemorrhagic virus or something that was in. Sometime in either the early 2000s or somewhere in there, an actual event that happened. So I can't help but think that they're kind of preparing us for something. Plus, with they were dealing with migration and things like that, talking about tuberculosis, talking about the bubonic plague in California, things like that. So. We're in for a roller coaster ride. I mean, it's almost
and on the other hand, I feel fortunate to be alive now because we are in a huge transition from one type of life to another, and there is evil on that threshold between what was and what will be, yes, and that's where we stand. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty much a warrior, and I always have been, mm-hmm. I'm very aware of the risks I take, and I attempt to ameliorate them to the degree I can, but I stand for something that is thrilling to stand for. And the strength, truthfully, the strength just pours into me. And that, I would say Clifford is the same way.
Yeah.
He's less, see, I'm a Romanian mystic, as well as being an intellectual. Clifford is not a Romanian mystic. He's much more pragmatic. He's much more about data and that, and that's why we get along so well, because I bring what he sort of doesn't allow, and he brings what I need in order to really back myself up. But
Exactly.
I feel very fortunate to live in such a time where there is such a good fight available right here, right now, and that I have the brain to do it, and that I have now the time. Since I'm older, I don't have to teach anymore. I have the time to write, and that so many good people come out to hear me talk and follow my radio interviews. I mean, it's a real blessing to have a good fight. And that's probably why I watch the detective stories, don't you think?
Yeah. It's it's amazing. I mean, I turned 51, a little while ago, and it was the build up. The 40s, just the build up to it. It was just like you don't really think about it, and I didn't even really think about it to a great extent. And then then 50 hit. And then that just kind of threw me into this fuzzy kind of warp. And then I found out that my sister was very ill, and it just kind of brought a lot of stuff to the surface.
But life is not forever.
No, it's not. No. She's since then has kind of rebounded, but now her husband has a serious, cancer now, thyroid type.
Which is why I recommend that people be a health nut like me. I mean, I am so healthy because I have been this way. That's one thing in the 60s that we really experimented a lot with was, how can we eat not like the middle class we came from? How can we eat like peasants? How can we grow food?
Right.
How can we cook food? What does it mean to have what is food? And I've been 50 years now. Yeah, 50 years. 50 years, as old as you are. I have been eating well, and boy, does it pay off. I totally recommend it to everyone, that they get very serious about what they're eating and preparing food. And I'm a big organic fan because it has worked miracles for me. Right. So, no doctors, no hospitals for 50 years. Hey, that's not bad. Actually, it's more than 50 years. It's actually closer to 60 years. So, I'm no fan of the medical industry, none whatsoever, even though I have 3 half-brothers who are doctors. And they all, what do they say about me that I'm so healthy and they're all suffering with cancer? They say, you're lucky. Now, isn't that objective?
Well, yeah.
That I'm lucky. Yeah, right. No, guys. Otherwise, they have to admit that their medical career has been very lacking.
Exactly. Again, it comes back to someone's, what they do for a living, what they've participated in, and for them to, they have to say that, hey, you just dodged. So far, you've just dodged, a lot of mines. There's a lot of landmines. There's a lot of sickness and disease out there. And, you got lucky, which, they have to think that way because their entire, unfortunately, they become, drug pushers and, another aspect of this system that was, taken over, the allopathic introduction by Rockefeller, by Carnegie, the Flexner report. They sent Abraham Flexner around to any number of different organizations, health-related organizations, whether it be chiropractic, homeopathic, whatever. And there was, a ton of them back then. And then they took their dirty money. They took their stinking, dirty, filthy money. And said, hey, if you start implementing some of this, petroleum-based, allopathic medicine, we'll give you some money. And so it was, as you would imagine, it was the slow, indoctrination by, them, these organizations saying, hey, we like money and resources, we'll take that. But they didn't realize that the devil was at their doorstep.
The cutting and drugging is so primitive. I just want to be clear. I don't take vitamins. I don't take supplements. I studied Chinese medicine for 6 years. I use Chinese medicine. I use pretty much an Asian diet of low meat, if any. The thing about the Morgellons, and I want to just make a point here for those who might be listening who may be suffering from it, you've got to keep alkaline. You've got to keep alkaline because Clifford found that the Morgellons thrives and reproduces like crazy in an acidic environment. So if it means you have to get pH paper and pee on it or spit on it or whatever, I kind of know by my saliva where I'm at in the alkaline acidic spectrum. If I have like a glass of wine with a friend, which is incredibly rare, I know that it's acidic. So next day I'm going to pay more attention to alkalinity. I stay on that border in the right ratio between acid and alkaline, knowing full well that we have all breathed this entity in, this pathogen called, Clifford calls it the cross-domain bacteria, because it has parts of all three kingdoms of nature in it. It was engineered, in other words. So anyway, I wanted to make that clear. I am not just eating this, that, and the other. I go by the law of yin-yang. Yin is acid, yang is alkaline. Right. And I gauge everything I eat or drink and the amount of fluid and all. It's all second nature now. It may sound complicated to people out there, and it was to me when I was 21 when I found this fantastic diet called macrobiotics. But I have stayed with it, and had wonderful cheating sessions and then get back on the track and then fall off the wagon again and get back on the track. I mean, I'm human. It's okay to be human. But on the whole, it has served me incredibly well. I'm 72, and I just turned 72 a couple days ago. All right. And all is well. Joints don't hurt. Nothing. So, let's think about that. Let's think about the elementary parts of life that we need to pay attention to in this materialistic culture that is collapsing now. So that we can remain healthy to help others that are going to be collapsing with the culture. So that's kind of how I look at health. It's an investment, and it isn't something you need to evangelize about and beat people over the head with. They will learn on their own. I'm a big fan of that you need to make your own decisions, your own choices. But what I need to do is tell you, hey, guys, I have found this out. I have experimented with this. I have had this experience. Consider it. And if it's not your cup of tea, move on and find someone else. Always learn from people. Always learn from all the investment that so many of us have made into learning what life is for. I always think of the Hindus. I think they weren't wrong. they said that this plane of existence is Maya, is illusion. I think in a way that might be true. You come into life, and one of the things you're going to have to handle is figuring out, gosh, is this an illusion or is this true?
Yeah.
Is this person illusory? Is this person lying to me? Or is this person telling the truth? We're going to have to develop what I think Paul in the New Testament calls spiritual discernment. We're going to have to really practice that and not wait for authority figures to come and take care of us and make our decisions for us, and not go to the great white doctor and have them give you drugs that Big Pharma is giving them perks on. You know, all these things, these small minutiae of life, these are the elements that make us strong or weak. And we need strength now. We really, really need the strength. So that's what I always try to communicate to people who take the time and energy to listen to me is, you know, please join me. Please join me in taking on a life that is exemplary, a consciousness that is alert and sharp, and paying attention and can make those discernments between truth and lies. It's a wonderful way to age. You can take it from me. I have never been stronger, I would say. And I am giving that strength to humanity in this time of a tremendous evil is here and a tremendous good is waiting to move, is how I look at it.
That's very, very beautifully put. Yes, and I've always heard of the the acid alkaline. And another thing, we got a little bit less than 2 minutes here, so I'll kind of wrap up, and I'll stop the recording, and then I would want to kind of talk with you about a couple things outside of the recorded phase. I've always, focused on that acid alkaline, and then a lot of people talking about, calcium. There was a guy that was pushing calcium.
Dr. Paul.
Well, no, this was a guy by the name of Bob Barefoot.
Oh.
He was the king of calcium at hotmail.com. I don't know if he's still around, but he did a television infomercial, and he talked about the importance of calcium, the importance of getting the right amount of calcium, getting it to absorb into the body to create alkalinity. And then later on, I heard a number of his different dissertations where he said that the definition of an alkaline means that you're bathed in electrons, that you have an excessive amount of electrons. So if your body is alkaline, your body has a relatively negative charge. And if any of these positively or items that come into your body that are lacking electrons, you can neutralize it right away. So what I'm going to do is
there is only one holistic system of systems. I will MK Ultra ya, put the MK scope on ya. If the MK hits you, it's guaranteed to open ya. The 57mm Mark 110, 220 rounds a minute, try to stop them. Don't put that on your wish list, that's retarded babble. Protesters make the hit list soon as they start to rabble. They are nothing but fishes in the barrel. It doesn't have to be Christmas for a carol. Some decorate with ornamental decorum. Some perform Shakana on Hanukkah and Purim. That's where my job come in. I am a blessing to the mercenary for the corporation selling weapons to them. Any potential competitor step into them. I'm authorized to knock them out and stick a GPS into them. They want to sell uranium to Iran. That's enriched, that's a bitch. Now we gotta teach a lesson to them.
This is RB Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.tv.
and social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill.